All right, so hello everyone. My name is John. I run this group, Sit Heads Meditation Club. Sit Heads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. If you want to hang out with us and come to more events like this, just sign up at sit-heads.com. We are a free, totally donation-based group. So please come sit with us, chat with us, hang out. We also have an online group chat running all the time in which we talk about different aspects of practice and distract each other from our jobs. I will put the link to that. So that's on Slack, an online chat platform, also free. You can put it on your phone, put it on your computer. I will share the link for that as well. Now, typically we have no set teacher. We are more of a peer group, but we do occasionally have visiting teachers join us, like tonight's guest, the wonderful Nikki Mirghafori, who I'll be introducing in just a moment. If you find tonight valuable, if you find the teachings valuable, which I think you will, I really encourage you to offer Jhana, donations made in a spirit of generosity and gratitude for the teachings. I will put in the chat, it's also in your email, but I will put in the chat a link to a way to offer Jhana to Nikki in gratitude for her teaching tonight. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nikki Mirghafori, PhD. She is a lineage holder with the Burmese master Pa-Auk Sayadaw, who authorized her to teach his distinctive systems of jhana, that's meditative absorption, and Vipassana, that's insight meditation. Nikki has a ton of silent retreat experience, and she has led retreats with Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, Jack Kornfield, Gil Fronsdal, and others. She is on the Teachers Council and Board of Directors at Spirit Rock and at the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, California. Nikki is also an artificial intelligence scientist. She has her PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley, and she has a particular interest in the ethics of AI. So we're going to start with a short conversation, maybe 30 minutes between Nikki and myself, where I get to ask Nikki some hopefully interesting questions, and we will receive some undoubtedly interesting answers and conversation. And then after that, we're going to have open Q&A. We'll open it up to the group. And when we get to that point, I'll talk about how we're going to do the Q&A. All right, so Nikki, is there anything that you would like to say to the group before we get started?
Sure, of course. Hi, John. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. And yeah, it's good to meet you. It's good to be with you. Actually, at least one of you I know already. And the rest of you I look forward to meeting. So before we start the conversation, it's nice to check in and also just to say now that my video has been spotlighted, your video will not be showing in the recording. That's how Zoom works. So you are welcome. In fact, you're invited to turn on your recording because it's not going to be part of the recording on Zoom since only mine will be recorded. But it will be nice to get a sense of the community because, as many of you know, in this practice, it's really about community. And I can also see you. Oh, thank you for, yes, thank you for turning on your videos. I can see those who just turned them on. Hi. Beautiful. It's great to see you. Yay, more faces are becoming online. How nice. The community is lighting up one square at a time. This is, yes, more squares lighting up. This is great. So, yeah, I would like to invite us to settle in together. We've had a 30-minute sitting. And it's nice to come together as a community before we start the blah, blah, the conceptual questioning and answering. So let's just arrive together with our hearts, with our presence, because that's really what matters in these communities. The conversation will come, but if we can settle into our hearts and into our bodies and into our intention, why we're here, why are we practicing? Why do we take this, hour and a half out of our Thursday to be in this way together? Whereas there's so many other things you could do. So as a way of arriving together, I like to invite us to check in. And it would be lovely to check in as a community. So here's the question. The question is simple. Um, you can either type it in chat or you can unmute yourself and say it. So I'll start by saying my name, if you want to say your name, Nikki, and the weather inside. Oh, actually, where you're from. It would be kind of fun to get a sense of where all of you are from. For me, it will help this kind of spread across the country, sometimes the world. A lot of times I teach and people are in different countries, which is kind of fun. So I'm Nikki. I'm in Mountain View, California. The weather outside is sunny and mild, and the weather inside is a little tired, calm, and excited to be with this new Sangha. So you're welcome to type it in chat or unmute yourself and say, how's the weather inside and outside? And where are you? I see people typing. This will be fun. Oh, nice. We are international. This is great. Fred from the French part of Canada. Great. Snowy here. Hi, Jamal from Maryland. The weather outside is foggy and wet. The weather inside is exhausted, but ambitious. Ah, yeah, holding the exhausted but ambitious part. Hi, Brad. Hello from Austin. Oh my goodness. Weather outside freezing. Weather inside barely above freezing. Love your sense of humor. That's great. Hi, Jeremy from Berkeley. Cloudy with patches of sun. Inside, tired, tranquil. I see the theme of tired here. Hi, Noah from Queens, New York, another East Coaster. Snowy today. Weather inside is a little anxious. Yeah, holding the anxiousness. Hi, Stephen from Milledgeville, Georgia. Cool. Flash flood today. Wow, this is exciting. Um, Weather inside, grateful, open-hearted. Ah, so nice to bring that into the container. As I read that, I feel grateful. Ah, and let's see, open heart. Oh, hi, Irina from Chile. From Chile. Oh my goodness, how cool. We are international. Summer here. It's warm. Weather inside warm too. Oh, sweet. That's right. That's great. Hi, Vivek from Bangalore, India. Lovely. Good morning to you, Vivek. Dark and a little cold outside. How sweet is this check-in? Oh, feeling so connected internationally. You beautiful people. Chris from Portland, the weather outside is gloomy. The weather inside is a tad anxious, but also happy to see these sit heads. Yes, me too. I'm getting to connect with you guys. I'm loving it already. This is great. Ryan from Baltimore, wet and cold, weather inside, excited, a little anxious. Yes. And it's funny, right? Excitement and anxiousness, they're two sides of the same coin. Maybe I can say more about that later if it comes up in the questions. Monica from Baltimore. Weather outside is icy and wet. Inside is joyful. Yay. Chappelle also here. Weather inside is hot and enthusiastic. Oh, that's great. Love it. Love it. Fun. Oh, sweet. Hi, Morgan from San Diego. Weather outside is beautiful and sunny, and weather inside is calm and open-minded. Ah, just as I say those words, I feel them. Ah, my nervous system relaxes. Hi, Brad from Long Beach. Weather outside is beautiful. Weather inside is pretty mellow. Mellow, yay. I feel mellow to hearing that. Hi, Brad. This is so sweet. Hi, Brooklyn. Hi from Brooklyn, New York. Avinash was snowing all day. It is beautiful out the window. Feeling calm and relaxed after the sit. Oh, excited to be here as always. Bijan and Matthew from New York City. Matthew, cold and snowing outside. Inside, Bijan is feeling alert. Hello, Bijan, feeling alert. Matthew's feeling nice to be here. Oh, this is sweet. Oh, oh yeah. So you're COVID safe. We're glad you're in a COVID pod there, Matthew and Bijan. You're safe. Oh, this is sweet. A couple more. Lynn from Sunnyvale, California. Down the road, Lynn. Stone's throw away from me. The weather outside is lovely, isn't it? Today has been lovely. And feeling a bit anxious inside because of work commitment tomorrow. Yes. And Anil from Mexico. Hola. The weather outside is cold and the weather inside is a bit like boiling with a mix of worrying thoughts and exciting and creative ones. Oh, I love the creativity of seeing the differentiation of the thoughts. Worrying, excited, pretty from Texas, cold, but the end is inside. Oh, wow. Couple of Texans here. I feel for you. Glad you have power to join. And Berlin, Germany. Oh, wow. It's pretty early your time or late. Outside is snowing, melting. Inside is calm and curious. Calm and curious. Lovely. Well, thank you all. This was so much fun to connect with you in this way. Different places that you're coming from, different weathers inside, ranging from anxiousness, bubbliness, hot inside, barely above freezing, inside, outside. Um, nice. Holding all of us, all of the range of humanity as we practice both internally and externally, as the Buddha says. Mindfulness internally to notice how the weather is inside, mindfulness externally. How is the weather outside? And externally outside in the community. So lovely to be with you. Now I'm warmed up, connected to you. Let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Nikki. That was really very sweet. I like that. Hold on just one second. All right. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've really been enjoying your talks and podcast conversations that I've been listening to. And one thing that struck me was you're obviously a very serious practitioner, not a serious person, certainly not self-serious, but quite serious with your practice. You've done a lot of retreat. You've been authorized to teach by no less than Pa-Auk Sayadaw. You obviously take the practice very seriously. And yet I notice that you talk very frequently about what is often considered, rightly or wrongly, softer practices, heart-centered practices, those sorts of approaches to the path. And I found that to be really bracing because it's just another reminder that those practices are absolutely important, vital, powerful parts of the path. And I'm wondering, could you speak a bit about the role of a practice like metta for someone who considers themselves practicing for awakening, someone intent upon stream entry, let's say? I think it's very easy for people to brush it aside and say, well, I don't want to take away the time from my Vipassana practice. I don't want to spend my time with that fuzzy wuzzy stuff. I want to get down to business. Can you speak about the role of metta practice on the path toward awakening?
So, John, actually, before I talk about metta practice, I need to talk about the way you've set up the framework of this question, which I need to question and turn around, because I think there is this conception that in part of the framework of the question that there is serious practice, and then there is the softer stuff that's not serious practice. So whether that's an intentional part of the framing or somehow there is what has been set through it unintentionally in an unseen way in the container, like the fish that swims in the water but doesn't quite see the water. I like to raise that there actually is no dichotomy. In fact, what many, and this is where actually gets a lot of practitioners, especially young practitioners who have a lot of aditanha, a lot of ambition in their practice, really gets them very tight and very hurt, actually. Very hurt and so tight that they can't practice for a while, or they need to get away, or there is so much achievement orientation about serious practice, about wanting to attain, wake up. Whereas actually, metta, gentleness, when it is imbued with the practice, knowing when to have metta towards oneself and others, can actually make it more, make it faster for us to wake up or let go. The other way to think of it is if you think of waking up as gaining something, attaining something, you are wasting your time. It's not about attaining anything. It's about learning to let go. It's about learning to let go. It's about letting go in small ways and letting go in significant ways. And what can support the letting go isn't beating your head against the wall. Okay, you have to let go. You have to let go. You have to let go. It's a sense. There is a gentleness in seeing yourself, seeing others, seeing your patterns. All of this in gentleness, with metta, with care. That letting go becomes available. That the mind, the heart lets go. I'll give you an example. Actually, I'm going to invite all of you. In a little practice. So take your fist and make a fist and make it really, really, really hard. Seriously, do it. This is an embodied, this is a physical practice. I want you to feel into and really make it hard and feel it. It's a somatic practice. Really feel how much it hurts. Okay, you could distract yourself. And now really come to feeling how painful it is to really want attainment, really want it, really want it, really want this, really want that. Okay, now soften a little bit, soften. And now notice that your fist, now it wants to open. After you've noticed how much it hurts, you don't want to actually have a tight fist. It's not natural to have a tight fist. It hurts to have a tight fist. Did anyone enjoy having a tight, painful fist? So, no. So remember this. This is a practice. This is a practice that you can keep coming back to. You can keep coming back to. That there can be that the sense of, first of all, noticing when there is this wanting, when there is this grasping, when there is this tense grasping, it doesn't really help. And noticing how much this actually hurts, it can support the opening up. And metta for yourself, for others, is really the grease in the wheels of awakening. Joseph Goldstein likes to say that practicing wisdom practices without metta, without compassion practices, is like riding a bicycle that is flat, out of air. It's a really rough ride. It's a really rough ride. When there is air, when there is air of compassion, air of metta in the bicycle, you get there easier. And faster, whatever faster is. So this idea that actually metta is soft and makes you weak and is only for not serious practitioners is not the wise way to see the framing. You need metta in order to practice all these practices, all the unfolding of everything. If you don't have the sensitivity, the gentleness of metta, it becomes really hard, depressing, challenging. Um, so there's more I can say, but I'll pause there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. I had a question about analysis and its role in meditation or in practice. I thought this would be interesting to ask you in particular. There is, I don't know if you're, I don't know how much time you spend in these sorts of regions, but there is, sort of a burgeoning Dharma culture on the internet. What might sort of be called the pragmatic Dharma internet, people speaking very frankly about practice, about attainments, and there's a sort of culture, a loose culture with probably a bunch of loosely affiliated subcultures within it emerging. And one thing that I notice that tends to happen, not always, but sometimes, is there's a tendency to start to use practice as fuel for conceptual proliferation. It becomes something to go back and forth about, to make models around, and then debate those models. And it becomes really a sort of fun conceptual thing to discuss. This often happens when people are just talking via text on the internet. And it's a lot of, oftentimes it's a lot of highly analytical people. It's just lots of scientists, software engineers, computer scientists, and you are a computer scientist, and yet I don't feel any of that in the way that you teach and the way that you analyze. And I'm sure that I know that analysis is helpful and can be helpful and is, of course, a tool in the toolkit. I just wonder if you could talk a bit about the utility of analysis when it comes to practice, and if you feel there are the limitations or dangers of analysis.
Yeah, interesting question. So there is analysis and there is analysis. So I think we need to not confound these two meanings by the word analysis. There are at least two different types that you just referred to in your question. So we need to separate them out, tease them out. One analysis refers to, as you talked about, people talking from a head place, like it's this, it's that, it must be this, it must be that, without any experience. And it's basically, it's conceptual jostling about. And there is really no use for, in terms of practice, it's not practical at all. And I appreciate Stephen sharing Papancha. Yes, Papancha. I love the word Papancha in Pali. Papancha is mental proliferation. And I love this word because Papancha, like you get a sense of the Papancha is mental proliferation in the mind. And especially you can see it very clearly on retreats when you're trying to be simple. And let's say you see somebody wearing, I don't know, a red shawl, and you're like, oh, a red shawl, I would love a red shawl if I had a red shawl. Oh, but I don't have a red shawl. Maybe I'll go to Burma and buy a red shawl. But no, Burma, there's a problem right now. I can't. Now, Papancha, it's just like proliferation. So whether it's in practice, proliferation, or whether it's in a discussion or hypothetical discussing, must be this way, must be that way. No, it's not really helpful. I mean, there's no, it's, whether the mental jostling, and there are some other less charitable words for that. Mental masturbation, whether it's about science, whether it's about practice, it's still very heady, not helpful. So that's one use of analysis in your conversation, in your question. There is another use of analysis, which is completely different. We still say analytical meditation. And for example, one I've practiced many different ways with many different masters, but primarily with Pa-Auk Sayadaw, my teacher, my primary teacher. He's taught me what's called analytical meditation in the way of the Visuddhimagga, in the path of purification and Abhidhamma, the higher teachings. It's called analytical meditation, not because it's heady, not because you sit and talk through it, but because it's detailed. There's a lot of things that you experience, a lot of details of the nature of mind, the nature of phenomena that you are invited to experientially become curious about and see and analyze. Again, not in the head. It's not heady. You're not thinking. You're deep in meditation and you're open to seeing this aspect of phenomena. And oh, it starts to unfold. It's like, I'll give you a simple example. Say, if you were practicing with the three characteristics. And I just finished teaching an online retreat on the three characteristics. Suppose you're practicing with seeing anicca, impermanence. You don't think about impermanence. As you're sitting in your meditation, you become sensitive, as if you drop in sensitivity. You see through the eyes of arising and passing, arising and passing. So whenever a sound arises, a sensation arises, you observe, you notice through the lens of arising and passing. If you're practicing anicca, you're not thinking about it, but you're seeing it. So it's a different kind of analysis, but it's analytical meditation. That's this very simple analytical meditation, but very different from this Papancha like conversation. So really helpful to separate out those uses of the word analysis.
Thank you. And I have a sort of follow-up on that, but I don't think we have time for it. I think I'd rather hear other people's follow-up on it, because I think there's a ton of fertile ground there, and also in what we discussed earlier and what you were remarking on with respect to metta practice and its importance, and the sorts of distinctions, false distinctions that it's possible, and dichotomies that it's possible for a practitioner to draw. So if you're ready, Nikki, why don't we open it up?
Sounds great. Let's open it up to the community.
All right. Is this, I think that's Jeremy. Jeremy, go ahead. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm going to take myself down here from the spotlight.
All right. Can you hear me, see me?
Yes. Can hear you, can see you. Tell you what, let's add you. Here you are.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Jeremy?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good. Yeah. My question is, we were just talking about analytical meditation, and you mentioned how the Pa-Auk Vipassana practice proceeds from the Visuddhimagga. And my question is, and I suppose this might fall into the category of Papancha, but maybe there's something useful that can come from it. How it compares with another practice, specifically the Mahasi practice, which is also takes its inspiration from the Visuddhimagga. I know that you have some familiarity with both, and I was curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, the Mahasi method is a subset.
Mm-hmm. A subset.
Yep, it's a subset. I think what's covered in the Visuddhimagga and in Abhidhamma is much longer. They're both Burmese teachers, but the Mahasi method is a subset, really much smaller, much reduced set of practices. compared to the extent of what's in the Visuddhimagga and Abhidhamma and what Pa-Auk Sayadaw teaches. It's yeah, a very small subset. Still, there is it's chosen in a particular way to. I mean, all these practices. It's not one better than the other. Different mindset to the other one. To different types. Yes, and I had practiced the Mahasi style, and for my mind, it wanted more. It wanted more thoroughness. So what Pa-Auk offered me, just for my type of mind, for me, my mind was like a kid in a candy store. It was just that there was no stone left unturned. But his style requires Visuddhimagga style absorptions and jhanas, which the Mahasi style require. It can be dry Vipassana actually, so it doesn't require the same extent of depth of jhanas. So, but as there's so many different ways to awakening, and again, remember, it's all about letting go. It's all about letting go, and it's about waking up, being a kinder person, being a freer person. It's so whatever method works, and whether it's Zen, where you're just sitting and not analyzing anything, whether that's the way that one's heart wakes up, becomes kinder, gentler, freer, you suffer less and cause less suffering to others. Yay, let that be your path. So I wouldn't so compare and contrast, just because, and again, I say it's a method that really worked for me, for my mind, but for some different minds, might be something totally different. Might be the devotional path, might be the path of, or what's called the liberation through the beautiful, which is actually liberation through Metta and the Brahma Viharas. So Metta, there is a way to wake up through that too. So I hope that answers your question, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nikki. Thank you, Jeremy. Monica had a question and expressed a willingness to unmute and ask it. So Monica, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being here.
Sure. Thanks for being here too, Monica. What's up?
So I was wondering, going back to your first question about the balance between metta and insight. I was wondering if there's a practitioner who wanted to weave them together more, how would you encourage that structure? Would it be like one sit of metta in the morning, one sit in the evening? Like, I think practically, how would you advise to do that?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, Monica. It comes up a lot, and it's an important one. So it depends. It really depends on your intention and where your life is, where your practice is. It's not one size fits all. So I'm going to give you a couple of different ideas. One idea, as you said, is 2 different sits. If you have 2 different sits, you can have 2 different sits. That's one idea. Another one is that, half of the sit could be metta, the other half, or the other way around, start. And then another way actually is to take a period of time, and it could be a few weeks, could be a few months, could be a year, and do metta practice if there is a sense of, that's where my heart needs to go right now. So and I had heard that people do that they take an extended period of time, and I had always wanted to do that. So I did. I took a year of my practice a long time ago, and I primarily did metta and compassion practices, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And actually, in some ways, I mean, right now, I teach what's called happy hour. So it's held 5 days a week from 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time. We call it happy hour, and it's dedicated to metta and karuna, compassion, forgiveness, joy practices, vicarious joy. So Brahma Viharas. So we do it 5 days a week. I teach it 3 times a week. So that's a primary practice for me even now. And for example, the weeks we were teaching, my teaching partner and I were teaching, or I was teaching primarily gratitude practice. I noticed I was just happy. I was so grateful and happy. So again, if you would like to support, if you'd like to have support and practice in community, I invite you to come and check that out. Check out Happy Hour. It's on my website. It's under teachings. It says Happy Hour. It's drop in, no registration necessary, donation based. So just check it out and see for yourself.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you, Monica. Come join us.
Thanks, Monica. Thank you, Nikki. Let's see what we've got here. So multiple people have asked, not exactly a practice question, but it's certainly an interesting question. Maybe it is a practice question. Who am I to say? Multiple people have asked about the intersection of your meditation practice and your work as an AI researcher. So one person phrased it like this: can you talk about your experience exploring the mind as a meditator and AI systems as a researcher? Do you believe the mind is a complicated machine, but just a machine after all? And then someone else in a similar vein asked, I'm wondering how Nikki incorporates these teachings into her ethical AI/computer science work. So I don't know if you'd like to say anything about that, Nikki.
Yeah, I'll say something about kind of the intersection of those. So what really drove me to study AI when AI was not hot years ago was curiosity about the mind. I was so curious about how the human mind worked. And I was a nerdy kid. I loved mathematics and physics, and so for me, studying how the mind worked was also studying simulations of it. So that's what drove me to AI. And then I worked in neural networks even before they were called deep networks. My thesis worked with deep networks, et cetera, et cetera. So it was the way of understanding the mind. That's what really drove me to AI. And similarly, one thing that drove me to Vipassana specifically, and this tradition, and I mentioned Pa-Auk Sayadaw with analytical meditation, was this fascination I had about how the mind works as a first person researcher. And the first retreat I sat years ago, a couple of decades ago now, I remember I was just astounded. It felt like a whole world opened up. I could see the workings of my mind from the inside. And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating, just to see volition and see intention and see all the, in Visuddhimagga, there is the cetasikas, the mental factors. And then when I practiced with Pa-Auk Sayadaw, seeing all these mental factors, just experiencing the nuance, the difference between this mental factor with that mental factor. And I thought, wow, these Buddhists really have figured this out, the science of the mind from the inside. So there's a sense of curiosity, fascination as a scientist for me that has really brought these together. Not to say that also what brings all of us to practice, besides the intellectual curiosity, is the suffering, is the human condition. And I had a chronic illness years ago, and that's why I sat my first retreat. And then when I started to see the workings of my mind, I was hooked. So it wasn't just suffering that brought me into it, but also this curiosity. So that's one way that I think both personally for me, these curiosities come together. And then the more I have practiced, the more steeped I've become in Buddhism, the more interested in ethics I have become, ethics in Buddhism. And that has extended to my interest in ethics in AI. Previously, before all this, I was just a scientist and wanted to make better models and maybe understand the mind. But now the ethics of it have become so important for me. Because, you know, if we don't make ethical decisions as designers, and I say we, both as users and also as designers, then who will? Who will? We need to make the ethical decisions ourselves. One last thing to say, I think there was a question about, do I see the brain as a complicated machine, and do I just see it as a machine? So it gets a little more complicated. So yes, the brain is a complicated machine, is very complicated. We don't understand it, and it's so important for us to have the humility. Recently, actually, I saw this article. I think it was in the Atlantic or New York Times. I can't remember, but the sense that neuroscientists now, with reams and reams of data, with so much data, and with having AI algorithms trying to analyze the data, actually admitting that maybe the human mind doesn't have enough intelligence to understand its own workings. And that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. We don't have enough intelligence to figure out how our minds and bodies work. So and the more I've practiced, the more humility I have about what I don't know and what is unknowable and what is the limit of not just our science, but all of our human endeavors. And beforehand, when I didn't have as much humility and I was young and a scientist, I was a scientist, a materialist scientist, and I subscribed to a materialistic scientific view of the world. And I've changed. I don't subscribe to that. There's a sense of awe and humility, as Einstein said, for the working of this nature that we don't completely understand. We claim we do, but we really don't. So it's good to have humility about it all. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. We have, looks like Annalou would like to ask a question. Annalou, would you like to unmute and ask your question of Nikki?
Sure, thank you. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Annalou.
Well, my question is about letting go. Like, what does it really mean to let go? Especially something I've been struggling like for the past months with intense emotions, more specifically with grief. So at first, I tried to let go, and I kind of got my mind that what my mind was doing was just like trying to use the sensations of my body as an escape to grief. Like when it came up, I was like, yeah, I'm going to let go. But my mind would like try to anchor itself to body sensations. And that went on for weeks. And I thought I was letting go until one night I discovered like there's tension in this, you know, like kind of a fear of if I don't observe my body sensations, this is going to be very ugly. So at that moment, something kind of opened up and a lot of, well, grief came out, a lot of pain. And I guess my question is like, I don't know, like I don't really understand what letting go is. And I'm not really sure if maybe my idea of letting go was completely wrong. And now I think like maybe letting go of grief is more like letting grief be grief, and its nature is that, well, it hurts, I guess. And it's kind of like a mini realization I had, but I still have my doubts because, well, it hurts. But I guess my question is like, if you open up or if you let go of things that hurt, like, is it always like this? Like, yeah.
Thank you, Annalou. I really appreciate your question. I really appreciate you bringing it up. And I want to recognize and acknowledge your inner wisdom, Because the moments you said, oh, I realized maybe letting go with respect to grief is letting grief be grief. In my mind, I was thinking, yay, Anilu's inner wisdom. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Specifically about grief, I can talk a little more generally about letting go, but specifically letting go in terms of grief it means letting grief be. That's exactly it. And being present for it. You can't let go of grief or throw it away prematurely. That becomes what we call spiritual bypass. It's like, okay, go away, grief. I'm done with you. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. La 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 la. I'm done. I'm a practitioner. I meditate. I should be done with grief now. How long has it been? It doesn't work that way, of course, especially with grief. Especially with grief. It doesn't work that way. It's, oh, grief, sweetie, you're still here. It's okay, honey. It's all right. That's when you bring in compassion and metta as practice. It's okay, sweetie. If you need to be here, dear grief, it's okay. It's all right. I'll be with you. It's like holding a little child. When the child is really distressed, you don't say, okay, are you done crying now? I gotta go. Okay. It's like, okay, sweetie, you're hurting. You have an earache. It's okay. It's okay. I'm here for you until it gets better. It's you. So with that sense of gentleness and kindness, compassion, holding the grief, feeling it in the body and letting it be, giving it space, give it a lot of space. And that way, when you give it space, you are with it. It lets go of you when it is ready. That's how letting go happens. It's not so much that you decide to let go and you let go. You stay with it tenderly. And when it's when it's felt, when it's been seen, when the lessons have been learned, the lessons of kindness, patience, compassion have been learned, it will let go of you.
Thank you. That's really helpful and really, I don't know, feels really calming to hear that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Anilu. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Here's a question that someone sent to me, Nikki. We do everything with a motivation in mind, but meditation sounds like doing something without any motivation. How do I resolve this contradiction?
Well, it's not so much a contradiction. So let me explain. So there is a difference. So instead of the word motivation, I'm going to use two different words instead. And I invite you, whoever asked the question, and actually all of you, to work with these two words instead. And one is aspiration. And the other one is expectation. So there is no dichotomy when you separate this concept of motivation into these two concepts, because you have an aspiration. Your aspiration is to wake up, to be the best version of yourself in this human life, the most compassionate, kindest, freest, gentlest, not in pain, not suffering, helping others, whatever your aspiration is. We all have an aspiration. Or maybe you have the bodhisattva aspiration to help all beings as an aspiration, not as an expectation. So the expectation is, my expectation is, okay, in the next 30 minutes when I'm going to sit, I'm going to have a good sit. And then you're going to suffer when your mind wanders. Oh God, are you going to suffer? My expectation is this. My expectation is that. Ouch. So expectation, there's a sense of tightness about it. I expect. Whereas aspiration sets your North Star. There is an aspiration, yes, and you need to have aspiration. Of course, have aspiration, but don't have expectation. So before you sit, Set your aspiration, set your intention, but not your expectation. And that's how there is no dichotomy. Makes perfect sense to me. Yes? Nod your head if this formulation makes sense. And if it doesn't, bring up a follow-up question.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I really love that formulation. It just feels so healthy to think in terms of aspiration. So thank you. It's a really wonderful way to just frame that whole question. Very helpful. Thank you. Here's a question. Can you talk a bit about your approach / framework for the jhanas? I know some schools see jhanas as difficult or rare to achieve, while others take a more democratic approach. And then once again, just for anyone who's listening who isn't sure what jhana is, it's a slightly esoteric term. It's often understood to be a state of concentration that results in what can sometimes be called meditative absorption, where you become absorbed in the object. Feel free to fix that if I got that wrong, but just for anyone who doesn't offhand know the word jhana. But then, Nikki, please.
So it's an interesting, again, I would come back to the question, and I think the way that has been asked about, some frameworks see it as rarely happening and some see it as more democratic. It's actually a little different from that, and and the difference to really bring up is, and again, just to talk about what jhanas are, when the mind. So there are many different types of practice, but in this tradition, we divide them kind of into two. Well, actually, in general, it's a longer conversation, but you can think of when the mind settles on an object and comes back to the same object over and over and over and over again. That's called samatha meditation. The state is samadhi, so the state of stillness, settling on an object. So when, for example, you're doing anapanasati, meditation with your breath, and you keep bringing it back to the breath, bring it back, you're doing a concentration meditation. And if that continues and the mind really, really, really settles, absorption can arise when the sense of merging with the breath, et cetera, can arise. There's a lot more there. Versus what's called Vipassana, which is the mind settles on one object and then on another and another and another. So you get to see change. You get to see change in Vipassana. You get to see the three characteristics. And the mind can get settled, but absorption does not arise on one object because you keep seeing change, how the mind states change, how the emotions change, how Vedana, feeling tone changes. So now coming back to this practice of absorption, to samatha practice, where absorption arises. So there are different definitions. There are different definitions of what constitutes a mind being absorbed. There is what's called the Sutta definition. So in the Suttas, the way the Buddha taught them, there is a particular definition of what constitutes an absorption. Then there is the Visuddhimagga, Abhidhamma definitions, which raises the bar. So according to these definitions, then it's much harder to accomplish this kind of jhana, whereas Sutta jhanas are more accessible. This kind of definition, what it means. And then yet there are some teachers who yet teach a slightly different method and different definition. And they call, and others call their method jhana light, which is even a lighter definition, a bar that is set differently or lower than the sutta. So if you take that bar, then yes, many absorption is much more easily achievable, depends on what kind of bar you set. So what I can say is that I have practiced in terms of jhanas, these absorptions, I practiced the Sutta jhanas. And there is this, qualitatively, there are similarities. The mind, there are many qualities which I won't get into in the couple minutes that we have left. And for me, when I practiced with Pa-Auk Sayadaw, with the Visuddhimagga jhanas, the difference to me of the quality of the jhanas in the two, it seemed that I had been listening to a tune, a beautiful, beautiful music. But previously, even though I thought, wow, this is the most beautiful music I have ever heard, this is gorgeous. But when the experience was different, that the deepening was much deeperly available, it seemed to me that, oh, what I listened to, yeah, was the same tune, which I thought it was the best tune ever. But it seemed like I was listening to it on an AM radio, compared to now having had this new experience that felt like the same music but with surround sound, or being in a concert hall. So it's the same tune, but the quality can be different. So I offer this back to whoever asked about the democratic or hype. It's not about democracy. It's about how these definitions are said. So I offer that. And again, I also say, whatever is supportive to your awakening. And in fact, many teachers don't even emphasize jhana. And in fact, when I teach now, depends on the student, depends on their proclivities, depends on their paths. Not everybody needs absorptions to wake up. They are not needed, really not. And for some students, I see they have the proclivity, it can be helpful to them, so I support them, I teach them. And for some others, no, not needed. Don't need to get the badge of jhana. It's not going to help you if you're just going to bang your head against the wall. It's like big deal. It's like spiritual materialism. Don't do it. So be wise about all these practices, even if they're discussed on these forums like, oh, do this, do that. Be wise about your practice, what works for you. Don't get into spiritual materialism. It's as bad or worse than materialism, period. Western materialism. I think spiritual materialism is even worse. So what makes us kinder, gentler, freer in this world? May not be jhanas.
All right. And with that, we're going to bring this to a close. Nikki, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Nikki Mirghafori, for these wonderful teachings. I really appreciated you being here with us tonight. I'm sure that everyone else does as well. I'm going to just pop in the chat really quickly once more. Here's where you can offer dana, which if you found value here, I encourage you to practice your paramis, practice your own perfections, and offer dana. Here also is Nikki's website. She has some wonderful audio and video talks on there. Here's our website, in case you want to hang out with us some more. We've got Dr. Sarah Lazar from Harvard joining us soon to talk about meditation and the brain, the neuroscience of meditation. We've then got, in what seems to be sort of a theme, Dr. Rick Hansen joining us after that to talk about meditation practice as a deep practitioner himself and also as a psychologist and student of brain science. Here's all that stuff in the Slack. Nikki, is there anything that you would like to say before we close?
I appreciate your dedication to practice, and you do this work not just for yourself, but for all those whose lives yours touches. And come practice with us at happy hour. And actually, maybe let me see if I can put that link in the chat too, for those who want to drop in on Zoom, or where is it here? On Zoom or YouTube, you can come and practice the practices of the heart. There it is, happy hour. So lovely to be with you all. Be well. May you be
Thank you,
well.
Nikki.
May you be free. Take care.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.